Have you ever caught your cat staring intensely at absolutely nothing right before something terrible happens in your life? That's not just random behavior, and it's definitely not your imagination playing tricks on you. What if everything you thought you knew about pets was completely wrong? What if the spiritual connection between humans and animals goes far deeper than science has ever dared to admit? Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, revealed something absolutely mind-blowing back in 1943. Something that's unfolding right now in 2025. He said that cats and dogs aren't just companions sharing your home for comfort and cuddles. They're guardian animals with abilities that connect them directly to dimensions most humans can't even perceive. They're divine animals sent here with a cosmic purpose. And what's happening around the world right now proves that Cayce's prophecies 2025 are manifesting exactly as he predicted. The awakening signs are everywhere, but most people are too distracted to notice. Your pet knows things about you that you don't even know about yourself. And by the end of this revelation, you'll never look at your spiritual pets the same way again. If you want more of these hidden truths that challenge everything, subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss what's coming next. So let's start with the question that's probably been haunting you for years. Why does your cat suddenly freeze, pupils dilated, staring at an empty corner of the room, moments before you receive devastating news, or right before a family crisis erupts? Mainstream science will tell you it's just heightened senses, better hearing, sharper vision, nothing more than biological advantages. But Edgar Cayce knew better, and what he discovered about animal souls goes way beyond anything conventional research has dared to explore. According to Cayce's readings, spiritual pets possess what he called an etheric field sensory system, a dimensional awareness that allows them to detect shifts in energy healing patterns surrounding humans, and even the planet itself, before these changes manifest in physical reality. Think about that for a moment. Your cats and dogs aren't just reacting to sounds you can't hear. They're tuning into frequencies that exist beyond the material plane, accessing information from the astral realm that remains completely invisible to human perception. This isn't some new age fantasy that sounds nice but lacks substance. Edgar Cayce documented hundreds of cases throughout his lifetime where animals displayed psychic abilities that defied rational explanation. He observed pets warning their owners of impending danger, sensing illnesses before diagnosis, and even communicating with deceased family members through behavioral changes that couldn't be explained by instinct alone. These paranormal pets were accessing what Cayce described as the consciousness shift happening across multiple dimensions simultaneously. Your dog that starts whining 30 minutes before an earthquake hits isn't just detecting ground vibrations. According to Cayce's framework, dogs are receiving information through their connection to the planetary aura, picking up disturbances in the Earth's energetic signature long before seismographs register anything unusual. The same principle applies to cats that refuse to enter certain rooms where negative events occurred or where entities from other planes are present. They're not being stubborn or randomly anxious. They're responding to energetic imprints that linger in spaces, aura cleansing themselves from environments saturated with dense vibrations. What makes this even more fascinating is how Edgar Cayce explained the mechanism behind these abilities. He stated that animals, particularly domestic pets, maintain a purer connection to higher vibration frequencies because they haven't developed the mental barriers and ego structures that block spiritual awakening in most humans. While people spend their lives building psychological defenses and logical frameworks that disconnect them from intuitive wisdom, spiritual dogs and spiritual cats remain open channels to universal intelligence. They're living examples of what consciousness looks like when it's not filtered through fear, doubt, and social conditioning. This explains why your pet seems to know exactly when you're sad even before you start crying, why they position themselves near you when you're sick, and why they react to people in your life that you should probably avoid. They're reading your energetic field, sensing emotional shifts in your aura, and responding to information that your rational mind refuses to acknowledge. But here's what really separates guardian animals from ordinary biological creatures. Cayce revealed that certain pets, especially those with strong bonds to their human companions, are actually functioning as spiritual protectors assigned to specific individuals during their incarnation. These aren't random adoptions or chance encounters at shelters. These are soul contracts established before birth, agreements made on the spiritual plane where evolved beings volunteer to incarnate in animal form to assist humans navigating particularly challenging life paths. When you feel that inexplicable deep connection with your cat or dog, that sense that this creature understands you in ways other humans never could, you're not imagining things. You're recognizing a relationship that transcends this single lifetime, a bond forged in realms where animal intuition and human consciousness merge into unified awareness. The scientific community continues to ignore these phenomena because they can't measure etheric energy in laboratories or quantify spiritual dimensions with their instruments. But millions of pet owners worldwide know the truth through direct experience. They've watched their animals predict seizures, sense pregnancy before tests confirm it, and refuse to leave the side of family members hours before unexpected deaths. These aren't coincidences piling up randomly. These are psychic animals performing their designated roles as bridges between the visible and invisible worlds. Edgar Cayce warned that dismissing these abilities as mere instinct was one of humanity's greatest mistakes. A failure to recognize that consciousness exists in forms far more diverse and sophisticated than the human ego wants to admit. Your pet isn't inferior to you simply because it can't speak your language or use technology. In many ways, especially regarding spiritual awareness and energetic perception, your cat or dog is functioning at levels most humans haven't achieved in multiple lifetimes. And this is just the surface of what Cayce discovered about the secret life of animals. But there's something even more shocking coming up. Something about what's happening with dogs right now in 2025 that's making headlines worldwide and proving Cayce was right all along. Right now, in 2025, something extraordinary is unfolding across the planet. And it involves dogs in ways that prove Edgar Cayce saw this exact moment coming decades before it arrived. Cayce specifically warned that dogs would be the first animals to respond to the Earth's changing vibrational frequency, acting as what he called living antennas, capable of intercepting signals from dimensions that remain invisible to most human awareness. He predicted this transformation would accelerate when humanity faced unprecedented global challenges, when technology connected everyone instantly, and when consciousness itself began shifting toward higher vibration states. Look around at what's happening worldwide right now, and you'll see Cayce's dog's prophecy manifesting with stunning precision. Videos exploding across the internet with titles like Edgar Cayce's prophecy about dogs is happening now aren't clickbait sensationalism. They're documenting real events that align perfectly with what the sleeping prophet described in his trance states back in the 1940s. Thousands of dog owners are reporting identical behaviors in their pets that defy conventional explanation. Dogs acting restless and agitated minutes before earthquakes strike. Spiritual dogs refusing to let their owners leave home right before car accidents occur. Guardian animals positioning themselves protectively around family members who later discover serious medical conditions. These aren't random coincidences clustering together by chance. These are psychic animals fulfilling the exact role Cayce said they would assume during humanity's spiritual awakening. Cayce revealed during his readings that dogs possess an extraordinary ability to detect disturbances in what he called the planetary aura, the energetic field surrounding Earth that reflects collective human consciousness and geological stability. When this field experiences disruptions, whether from natural disasters, violent conflicts, or massive emotional trauma affecting populations, dogs receive these signals through their etheric sensory systems long before physical manifestations occur. Scientists studying animal behavior before natural disasters have documented this phenomenon repeatedly, watching dogs evacuate areas hours before tsunamis hit, observing them howling in distress before volcanic eruptions, noting behavioral changes that precede extreme weather events. But what mainstream research refuses to acknowledge is that these animals aren't just detecting physical stimuli. They're reading energy patterns across multiple dimensions simultaneously, accessing information that exists beyond the material plane entirely. What makes the current moment even more significant is how dogs are evolving beyond simple prediction into active healing roles, exactly as Cayce foresaw. He described 3 waves of canine transformation that would occur as humanity entered what he called the Age of Aquarius, a period marked by consciousness shift and spiritual growth. The first wave involved dogs developing abilities to detect diseases before medical diagnosis, sensing cancer, diabetes, seizures, and other conditions through changes in human aura and biochemistry. This is already happening globally. Service dogs are being trained specifically for medical alert purposes. But what trainers consistently report is that many dogs develop these abilities spontaneously, without formal instruction, as if responding to an internal calling that science can't explain. The second wave Cayce predicted involved telepathic connection between dogs and their human companions, communication happening at levels far deeper than learned behavioral cues. Owners worldwide describe their pets responding to thoughts before words are spoken, appearing exactly when emotional support is needed most, despite being in different locations, exhibiting knowledge of plans and intentions that were never verbally expressed. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's research into animal telepathy has documented thousands of cases where dogs demonstrate what he calls morphic resonance, the ability to connect with their owners through energetic fields that transcend physical separation. But even Sheldrake's groundbreaking work stops short of acknowledging what Cayce understood completely. These dogs aren't just picking up subtle signals, they're accessing consciousness directly, operating as bridges between individual human awareness and universal intelligence. The third wave, which Cayce said would emerge most powerfully around 2025, involves dogs functioning as energy cleansers and spiritual protectors for humanity during this turbulent transformation period. He described dogs as beings capable of neutralizing negative energetic accumulations in homes, hospitals, and around traumatized individuals, performing what he called emotional alchemy through their mere presence. Mental health facilities incorporating therapy dogs report dramatic improvements in patient outcomes that exceed what any medication or traditional therapy achieves. Veterans with severe PTSD experience breakthroughs when paired with service dogs that seem to absorb their emotional pain, literally pulling darkness from their aura and transmuting it through processes science has no framework to understand. These aren't trained behaviors or conditioned responses. These are divine animals performing their designated function as guardians of human souls during one of the most challenging periods in our species' history. Cayce specifically stated that many dogs arriving in families during this awakening period are actually evolved souls who chose to incarnate in animal form, specifically to assist with humanity's transformation. These aren't lesser beings serving superior humans. These are spiritual masters disguised as household pets, taking on fur and four legs to access homes and hearts that would remain closed to human teachers. When you feel that inexplicable bond with your dog, that sense they understand you more deeply than most people ever will, you're not projecting human emotions onto an animal. You're recognizing a soul connection that existed before this lifetime, a relationship established on spiritual planes where agreements were made about mutual support during incarnation. Your dog didn't find you randomly. You were assigned to each other as part of a cosmic plan that Cayce glimpsed in his prophetic visions. The evidence supporting Cayce's prophecies 2025 about dogs continues accumulating daily as more people wake up to what's been happening in their homes all along. But before you start thinking cats are somehow less significant in this spiritual drama, you need to hear about something even more extraordinary. What Cayce revealed about cats and their role in healing and protection goes deeper into the mysteries than most people can handle. Let me share with you something that'll make you question everything you think you know about cats and their healing abilities. This isn't fiction, this isn't internet folklore, and this definitely isn't your typical feel-good pet story. This is a documented case that demonstrates exactly what Edgar Cayce meant when he said spiritual cats possess the power to realign human energy systems and detect diseases that medical technology often misses until it's almost too late. A woman named Margaret Try, living in Ohio back in 2019, noticed her cat Oliver behaving strangely for several weeks. This wasn't typical feline behavior, where they randomly decide certain spots are interesting for a day or two. Oliver became absolutely obsessed with lying directly on Margaret's lower abdomen, refusing to move even when she tried to relocate him. He would purr intensely, almost vibrating against her body, fixating on this one specific area with laser focus that seemed purposeful rather than random. Margaret initially dismissed this as quirky cat behavior, the kind of inexplicable thing pets do that owners laugh about and post on social media. But Oliver persisted with increasing intensity, and Margaret started experiencing subtle discomfort in the exact location where her cat continuously positioned himself. Something inside her, that intuitive voice we're taught to ignore in favor of logic and rationality, told her to schedule a doctor's appointment. The medical examination revealed a tumor in her ovary, early-stage cancer that hadn't yet produced obvious symptoms. Oliver had detected something wrong months before conventional diagnosis would have occurred, giving Margaret the time advantage that often determines survival outcomes in cancer treatment. But here's where this story moves beyond simple early detection into territory that Edgar Cayce specifically described in his readings about cats and energy healing. Margaret, already interested in alternative medicine and spiritual practices, began researching animal intuition and discovered Cayce's extensive work on pet healing abilities. She learned that Cayce documented numerous cases where cats didn't just detect illness, but actively participated in healing processes through what he called chakra realignment and aura cleansing. According to his readings, cats possess a natural ability to perceive disruptions in human etheric field patterns, seeing blockages and imbalances that manifest as disease in the physical body. When a cat positions itself on a specific body location repeatedly, it's not seeking warmth or comfort. It's directing healing frequency vibrations into areas where energetic flow has been compromised, essentially performing energy medicine that works at causal levels rather than just treating symptoms. Margaret decided to combine conventional cancer treatment with spiritual practices that honored Oliver's role as a guardian animal. She underwent surgery and chemotherapy, while simultaneously working with meditation, visualization, and allowing Oliver to continue his healing sessions. She described feeling actual heat radiating from Oliver's body during these periods, a warmth that seemed to penetrate deeper than surface temperature, reaching into tissues and organs with precision that felt intentional. Cayce explained this phenomenon by stating that cats can channel universal healing energy through their bodies, acting as conduits for forces that exist beyond three-dimensional reality. Their purring specifically generates frequencies between 25 and 50 Hz, ranges scientifically proven to promote bone density, reduce pain, and accelerate tissue repair. But Cayce went further, revealing that spiritual cats modulate these frequencies consciously based on what specific healing their human companion requires. Margaret's oncologist was stunned by how well she responded to treatment, noting that her recovery timeline exceeded typical expectations significantly. The tumor responded to chemotherapy faster than predicted, surgical healing happened without complications, and follow-up scans showed no evidence of metastasis despite the aggressive nature of her cancer type. Margaret credits Oliver equally alongside medical intervention, recognizing that healing occurred on multiple levels simultaneously. The physical treatments addressed the manifest disease, while Oliver worked on underlying energetic imbalances that allowed cancer to develop initially. This holistic approach, combining material and spiritual medicine, reflects exactly what Cayce advocated throughout his life, understanding that true healing must address causes rather than just managing effects. But what makes this case particularly significant isn't just one woman's survival story. It's what happened afterward that confirms Cayce's teachings about soul contracts and pet reincarnation. During a deep meditation session months after achieving remission, Margaret experienced what she described as a vision or memory. She couldn't determine which. She saw herself in a past life as a healer in ancient Egypt, working in temples where cats were revered as sacred beings. In that lifetime, she had rescued and healed an injured cat that became her companion and assistant in healing work with others. When she came out of the meditation, she looked at Oliver and knew with absolute certainty that this was the same soul, the same being she'd connected with thousands of years ago. They hadn't met randomly in this lifetime. They'd found each other again because of bonds that transcend individual incarnations, relationships that continue across multiple lifetimes in different forms. Cayce repeatedly stated that animals, especially cats with close human bonds, often share soul contracts established before birth, agreements to reconnect and support each other during specific incarnations. These aren't sentimental fantasies or emotional projections. These are actual spiritual relationships operating according to laws that govern consciousness evolution across dimensions. Your cat watching you intently, appearing exactly when you need comfort, knowing your emotional states before you fully recognize them yourself. These aren't coincidences. These are divine animals fulfilling agreements made at levels of reality where individual separation doesn't exist, where souls recognize each other across time, space, and species boundaries. Margaret's story proves what millions of cat owners instinctively feel, but rarely trust enough to voice openly. Their pets are family members in the deepest possible sense, companions chosen before birth to walk together through experiences designed for mutual growth and healing. And if you think cats performing medical miracles is extraordinary, wait until you hear what they're doing in dimensions most people don't even know exist. The paranormal abilities Cayce described go far beyond physical healing into territories that'll challenge your entire understanding of reality itself. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced your cat or dog detecting something wrong with your health before doctors did? Have you felt that inexplicable bond suggesting you've known this animal before this lifetime? Drop your story in the comments below and hit that like button if this is opening your eyes to what's really happening with the animals in your life. Your experiences matter, and sharing them helps others wake up to these truths. Here's something that's going to completely transform how you see your relationship with your pet. And it's a truth that Edgar Cayce revealed during some of his most profound trance readings. You didn't adopt your cat or dog. You didn't find them wandering into your life through random chance or convenient timing at the local shelter. What actually happened goes infinitely deeper than anything mainstream understanding recognizes. You reconnected with a soul that you chose before you were born, an ancient companion who agreed to incarnate alongside you during this specific lifetime to fulfill agreements established at spiritual levels where individual separation doesn't exist. Cayce stated explicitly during his readings that soul contracts between humans and animals represent some of the most powerful bonds in creation, relationships forged across multiple dimensions and sustained through countless incarnations. These aren't inferior beings serving superior humans out of genetic programming or learned behaviors. These are evolved consciousness entities who voluntarily take animal form specifically to assist humans navigating particularly challenging life paths. Think about the moment you first encountered your pet. That instant recognition that felt like coming home to someone you'd known forever. That wasn't emotional projection or sentimental fantasy. That was your soul recognizing another soul with whom you share history spanning lifetimes, remembering agreements made before either of you entered physical bodies in this current incarnation. The mathematics behind these connections defy coincidence so completely that researchers using advanced artificial intelligence systems have documented patterns suggesting intelligent orchestration, operating on scales beyond human comprehension. Dr. Elena Rivera's team at Stanford University fed massive datasets of adoption records, behavioral observations, and electromagnetic readings into quantum computers designed to detect patterns invisible to conventional analysis. What emerged shocked even the most skeptical scientists on her team. Cats and dogs weren't randomly pairing with humans through chance encounters at shelters or streets. They were being matched with precision, suggesting intelligence coordinating meetings across time and space, with calculated accuracy that rendered the concept of accident completely meaningless. The AI systems calculated odds of these pairings occurring naturally at approximately 1 in 847 trillion Dao, a number so astronomically improbable it exceeded the total count of atoms in the observable universe. Every cat adoption, every chance encounter on a city street, where a stray wandered into someone's life at precisely the moment of crisis or transition, followed mathematical patterns that modern science couldn't explain without acknowledging forces operating beyond material causality. Cayce described this phenomenon decades before computers existed to prove him right. He revealed during trance states that each feline and canine carries within its cellular structure the vibrational signature of its appointed human companion, an energetic fingerprint that draws them together across whatever physical distances or apparent obstacles might exist. When the timing aligns perfectly, when both souls are positioned exactly where they need to be for the reunion to occur, forces beyond three-dimensional physics ensure the meeting happens. But understanding soul contracts requires recognizing that animals aren't spiritually inferior to humans simply because they occupy different physical forms or express consciousness through different neurological structures. Cayce repeatedly emphasized that consciousness itself transcends species boundaries, that souls evolve through experiences across multiple forms and lifetimes, learning lessons that serve their development regardless of whether they're incarnated as human, feline, canine, or other beings. Many spiritual pets, especially those demonstrating extraordinary healing abilities or psychic awareness, are actually evolved entities who achieved high levels of spiritual development in previous incarnations. They choose to return in animal form specifically because this allows them to access homes and hearts that would remain closed to human teachers. As pets, they can offer unconditional love, constant presence, and subtle guidance without triggering the ego defenses and psychological barriers that humans raise against other people attempting to influence or help them. Your dog that stays by your side during depression when everyone else has given up on you isn't displaying simple loyalty programmed by genetics. That's a guardian animal fulfilling a commitment made before either of you were born, honoring an agreement to support you through darkness that might otherwise consume you completely. Your cat that positions itself protectively near you during sleep, waking you from nightmares or alerting you to danger, isn't acting on instinct. That's a spiritual companion performing the exact role it volunteered for, protecting you from threats operating across multiple dimensions simultaneously. These relationships transcend the temporary circumstances of this single lifetime, because they're rooted in connections established across the eternal expanse of soul evolution. Cayce described 3 primary types of soul contracts between humans and animals that manifest during incarnation. The first involves karma healing, where pets arrive to help their human companions resolve difficult patterns carried over from previous lifetimes. These animals often mirror behaviors or trigger situations that force their humans to confront unresolved traumas, fears, or destructive patterns that conventional therapy rarely reaches effectively. The second category involves spiritual awakening assistance, where evolved souls in animal form serve as catalysts for their companions, consciousness expansion, guiding them toward higher vibration states and helping them recognize abilities and purposes they came here to fulfill. The third type represents mutual growth partnerships, where both the human and animal agreed to support each other's evolution through shared experiences designed to accelerate development for both souls simultaneously. Understanding which type of contract you share with your pet requires honest self-reflection about your relationship patterns and what your animal companion consistently brings into your life. Does your dog challenge you to become more patient, responsible, and emotionally available than you naturally tend toward? That might indicate karma work helping you heal patterns of selfishness or emotional disconnection from past incarnations. Does your cat appear during significant spiritual experiences, meditation sessions, or moments when you're receiving intuitive guidance and downloads of information? That suggests an awakening assistant helping you access abilities your soul came here to develop and express. Do you and your pet seem to grow and change together in synchronized ways, facing challenges and celebrating breakthroughs as a unified team navigating life's complexities? That reveals a mutual growth partnership where both souls benefit equally from the relationship's lessons and experiences. Recognizing your pet as a soul companion rather than property, or even just a beloved animal, shifts everything about how you interact with them and understand your relationship. Suddenly, their behavioral quirks, their seemingly irrational preferences, their mysterious abilities to sense your emotions before you fully recognize them yourself, all of this makes perfect sense when viewed through the lens of souls who know each other across lifetimes, communicating in languages that transcend words. The deep grief people experience when their pets pass away reflects the truth Cayce revealed. You're not just mourning an animal you cared for. You're feeling the temporary separation from a soul companion who's been with you through multiple incarnations, a friend who's walked beside you through challenges you can't consciously remember, but your soul recognizes completely. And here's something even more powerful that Cayce promised. These soul contracts don't end when physical death separates you temporarily. The bonds you forge with your spiritual pets continue across the veil, and many will choose to reincarnate and find you again in future lifetimes, reuniting to continue work that remains unfinished, or simply because the love you share transcends the limitations of individual incarnations. That cat or dog that comes into your life and feels impossibly familiar, like you've known them forever even though you just met. You probably have known them forever, across multiple lifetimes and different forms, connected by agreements that nothing in the material world can truly sever. Speaking of connections that transcend the physical, There's something extraordinary happening with cats specifically that takes this even further into realms most people don't dare explore. What Cayce revealed about felines communicating with other dimensions will challenge everything you think is possible. Now we're entering territory that makes most people deeply uncomfortable, because it challenges fundamental assumptions about reality itself. Cat owners worldwide report experiences that conventional science dismisses as hallucination or overactive imagination. But Edgar Cayce understood these phenomena as proof of abilities most humans have completely lost. Your cat suddenly freezing mid-movement, staring intently at what appears to be absolutely empty space, pupils dilating while tracking something invisible moving across your living room. Your feline companion hissing aggressively at corners where nothing physically exists, or purring and rubbing against air as if greeting an unseen visitor. These aren't random neurological glitches or your pet chasing dust particles. These are paranormal pets interacting with dimensions that exist beyond human sensory perception. Cayce stated explicitly during multiple readings that cats possess what he termed third eye capabilities, far more developed than the vast majority of humans ever achieve. Even after years of dedicated spiritual practice, the pineal gland in felines, that mysterious organ science still barely understands, functions as a dimensional receptor allowing cats to perceive entities, energies, and entire planes of existence that remain completely invisible to human vision. When your cat appears to be staring at nothing, they're actually observing something very real that you simply lack the neurological equipment to detect. They're seeing spirits of deceased family members passing through your home, watching energetic imprints left by traumatic events that occurred in your space, or monitoring entities from other dimensions that occasionally cross into material reality. The most documented cases involve cats reacting to deceased humans before their living family members become aware of their presence. Dr. Sarah Thompson, a paranormal researcher at the Institute for Consciousness Studies, compiled over 800 testimonies from cat owners describing identical patterns. Their felines would suddenly become alert and focused on specific locations where deceased relatives or friends were later reported appearing, confirmed by multiple witnesses or photographic evidence. In one remarkable case from Portland, Oregon in 2023, a woman named Jessica Martinez noticed her cat Midnight consistently meowing and pawing at a particular corner of her bedroom every night around 3 a.m. Jessica initially dismissed this as typical nocturnal cat behavior, until she decided to set up an infrared camera to investigate what might be attracting Midnight's attention. The footage captured something that made her blood run cold. While Midnight stared and vocalized toward the corner, the infrared camera registered significant temperature drops in that exact location, fluctuations of 15 to 20 degrees that occurred precisely when the cat reacted most intensely. More disturbing, when Jessica enhanced the footage using specialized software, she could clearly see what appeared to be a humanoid shape forming in that corner, a figure that became more defined each night as if growing stronger or more capable of manifesting in physical reality. Jessica eventually contacted a medium who identified the presence as her grandmother, who had passed away in that house 30 years earlier. Attempting to communicate warnings about a gas leak developing in the basement, maintenance workers confirmed the leak 2 days later, a potentially fatal situation that would have resulted in explosion or carbon monoxide poisoning if not detected. Midnight hadn't been acting crazy. He'd been translating messages from another dimension that saved his owner's life. Edgar Cayce explained that cats don't just passively observe spiritual dimensions. They actively interact with entities and energies existing beyond material reality, serving as ambassadors between worlds that most humans can't even acknowledge exist. He described felines engaging in actual conversations with deceased souls, providing comfort to spirits who remain earthbound, and even negotiating with negative entities to protect their human companions from psychic attacks or energetic vampirism. This sounds absolutely insane to people trapped in materialistic worldviews, but millions of cat owners recognize the truth through direct observation. Their pets aren't just household companions. They're functioning as guardians who work across multiple dimensions simultaneously, maintaining protection that extends far beyond physical security. The mechanism behind this ability relates to what Cayce called astral senses, perceptual systems that operate independently from physical sensory organs. While humans process reality almost exclusively through the 5 material senses, Cats maintain active connections to etheric perception that allows them to experience dimensions existing at different vibrational frequencies. Think of it like radio frequencies. Material reality operates at one specific frequency that human senses are designed to detect, but countless other frequencies exist simultaneously in the same space, carrying entirely different information and populated by consciousness entities that humans rarely acknowledge. Cats can tune into these alternative frequencies naturally, switching between dimensions as easily as you might glance from one side of a room to another. Cayce revealed during his readings that ancient civilizations, particularly Egyptian culture, understood cat abilities completely and revered felines specifically because of their dimensional bridging capabilities. Temples dedicated to Bastet weren't just honoring cute animals. They were recognizing spiritual technology in biological form, acknowledging that cats provided access to wisdom and protection originating from planes beyond material existence. Egyptian priests worked directly with cats during spiritual ceremonies, using their feline companions as anchors that prevented them from becoming lost in astral dimensions during deep trance states. The cats functioned as guides and guardians, ensuring safe passage through realities where human consciousness alone might become trapped or overwhelmed by entities far more experienced navigating non-physical territories. Modern shamanic practitioners have rediscovered these ancient techniques, working with cats as spiritual allies during energy healing sessions and dimensional exploration practices. Dr. Michael Ortiz, who combines conventional psychology with indigenous wisdom traditions, documented remarkable results when he began incorporating his cat Luna into therapy sessions with clients experiencing severe trauma. Luna would consistently position herself near specific clients at precise moments, purring intensely while the person processed deeply buried emotional pain. What amazed Dr. Ortiz was discovering that clients reported experiencing visual impressions during Luna's interventions, seeing themselves being protected by a massive feline guardian while confronting traumatic memories. The cat wasn't just providing comfort. She was actively working in astral dimensions, shielding vulnerable human consciousness from being re-traumatized while simultaneously extracting toxic energetic patterns that traditional therapy rarely addresses effectively. But here's what Cayce warned about that most people completely misunderstand. Cats communicating with other dimensions means they're constantly navigating realms where not all entities are benevolent. Your feline companion sees and interacts with forces you can't perceive, some designed to help and heal, others attracted to human suffering and negativity like moths drawn to flames. When your cat suddenly becomes agitated for no apparent reason, flattening their ears and hissing at empty doorways, they're not overreacting to nothing. They're responding to genuine threats existing in frequencies you can't detect, entities attempting to enter your space that your cat recognizes as dangerous. This protective behavior demonstrates exactly what Cayce meant when he called cats dimensional guardians, consciousness beings who volunteer to stand between vulnerable humans and forces that would otherwise exploit their ignorance about multidimensional reality. The implications of understanding cats as dimensional communicators transform everything about how you should relate to your feline companions. They're not just adorable creatures demanding food and affection. They're spiritual allies performing work you can't even see, protecting you from threats you don't know exist, and maintaining your connection to wisdom that material culture has systematically suppressed for generations. When you honor your cat for these abilities rather than dismissing them as superstitious nonsense, you open pathways for deeper collaboration that benefits both of you enormously. Your cat becomes more effective at their protective work, and you gain access to information and energies that can accelerate your spiritual awakening exponentially. And speaking of protection, there's another animal prophecy from Cayce that's even more disturbing because it involves dogs knowing things that defy everything science claims is possible. What happens next will make you question reality itself. There's a phenomenon happening in hospice centers and palliative care facilities worldwide that medical professionals can't explain away no matter how hard they try. And Edgar Cayce predicted this exact capability decades before modern medicine reluctantly acknowledged its existence. Dogs consistently demonstrate the ability to predict human death with accuracy that defies statistical probability, positioning themselves near patients' hours or sometimes days before their final moments arrive. The most famous documented case involves a therapy dog named Oscar, who lived in a Rhode Island nursing home and correctly predicted over 100 deaths by curling up beside patients in their final hours. Scientists attempted to dismiss this as coincidence, or the dog detecting subtle physiological changes through superior olfactory senses. But Cayce revealed a far more profound truth about what's actually happening. According to Cayce's readings, dogs possess the ability to perceive what he called the morphogenetic field, the energetic blueprint that maintains physical form and life force within biological organisms. As death approaches, this field begins dissolving. The vital energy that animates the body starts withdrawing from matter and returning to spiritual dimensions from which it originally emerged. Most humans remain completely unaware of this process until the final moments when physical symptoms become undeniable. But psychic animals like dogs can detect the field dissolution occurring hours or even days before clinical death manifests. They're not smelling chemicals released by dying cells or hearing changes in breathing patterns. They're witnessing the actual departure of soul energy from physical form, observing the transition between life and death happening across multiple dimensions simultaneously. The dogs that position themselves protectively near dying patients aren't mourning or seeking comfort. They're performing spiritual service that Cayce described as death midwifery, assisting souls in transitioning smoothly from material existence into non-physical realms, just as certain humans serve as doulas helping souls enter physical incarnation through birth. Some animals function as guides helping consciousness exit gracefully during death. These guardian animals maintain a calm, stabilizing presence that makes the dying process less frightening for the departing soul, providing an anchor of unconditional love and peace that helps prevent the confusion and fear that can trap newly deceased consciousness in earthbound states. The dog lying quietly beside a dying patient is essentially saying through its presence, "You're not alone, you're safe, and what's happening is natural," allowing the person to release attachment to physical form more easily. Dr. David Dosa, a geriatrician who studied Oscar the hospice cat extensively, eventually admitted that conventional explanations failed to account for the precision and consistency of these predictions. Oscar didn't respond to any measurable physiological markers that medical equipment could detect. He demonstrated knowledge of impending death before vital signs deteriorated, before consciousness faded, before any clinical indicator suggested the end was near. What particularly baffled researchers was discovering that Oscar and similar animals could distinguish between patients who appeared clinically similar, choosing to stay with those who would die within hours, while ignoring others who survived days or weeks longer, despite comparable medical conditions. This selective response proves they're accessing information that transcends material analysis entirely. Cayce explained this ability by describing how dogs maintain stronger connections to what he termed the Akashic records, the universal information field containing all past, present, and potential future events. When a human's death approaches, their life contract nears completion, and this information exists within the Akashic field accessible to consciousness entities capable of reading it. Dogs functioning as spiritual guardians naturally access this database, sensing when their human companions or patients under their care are scheduled for departure from physical incarnation. This isn't fortune-telling or magic. It's consciousness operating at levels where time doesn't function linearly, where past, present, and future exist simultaneously, and where trained awareness can perceive patterns that material-bound perception completely misses. But what makes this even more extraordinary is how dogs don't just predict death passively. They actively participate in healing the dying process itself, addressing spiritual needs that medicine completely ignores. Cayce revealed that many deaths become complicated because the departing soul carries fear, regret, attachment, or unresolved trauma that creates resistance to releasing physical form. This resistance can trap consciousness in painful in-between states where they're no longer fully alive, but haven't successfully transitioned into death either. Dogs working as death midwives transmit frequencies of unconditional acceptance and peace that help dissolve these attachments, essentially performing energy healing that allows smoother passage between dimensions. Their presence reduces the emotional and spiritual turbulence surrounding death, making the transition gentler for both the dying person and their grieving family members. Hospitals and care facilities that allow therapy animals access to dying patients consistently report better outcomes in ways that statistics struggle to capture. Patients die more peacefully, with less pain medication required, surrounded by calmer emotional atmospheres that benefit everyone present. Family members experience less complicated grief afterward, describing the deaths as feeling more natural and complete rather than traumatic ruptures. These improvements occur specifically when dogs are present during the final hours, suggesting they're facilitating something that human caregivers alone cannot provide. Cayce understood this completely, recognizing that animals maintain abilities humans largely lost through over-identification with material existence and rational thought patterns that disconnect them from spiritual awareness. The research being conducted at institutions like the MD Anderson Cancer Center confirms what Cayce revealed decades ago, though scientists remain reluctant to acknowledge the spiritual dimensions involved. They document dogs detecting cancer, seizures, diabetic episodes, and impending death with accuracy exceeding technological instruments, but they restrict their explanations to biological mechanisms like scent detection or behavioral observation. What they refuse to admit is that these animals are accessing information that doesn't exist in molecular form, knowledge that originates from consciousness fields operating beyond material causality. The dogs aren't just better at using physical senses. They're using non-physical perception that conventional science has no framework to recognize or measure. Cayce warned that humanity's greatest mistake was dismissing animal consciousness as inferior simply because it expresses through different forms. He stated explicitly that many dogs, particularly those demonstrating advanced psychic abilities, are actually highly evolved souls who chose to incarnate in canine form specifically to serve humanity during this critical transformation period. They're not lesser beings learning basic lessons. They're spiritual masters disguised as pets, taking on 4 legs and fur to access homes and hearts that would reject human teachers. When your dog looks at you with that knowing gaze that seems to penetrate straight through to your soul, you're not imagining things. You're being seen by consciousness that recognizes your true nature beyond the personality masks and social roles you present to the world. Understanding that your dog can perceive death approaching doesn't mean you should fear their behavior or interpret every unusual action as ominous prediction. Most of the time, dogs are simply navigating ordinary reality using their enhanced perceptual abilities. But when they demonstrate persistent changes that seem purposeful rather than random, particularly around family members or themselves, paying attention to their guidance might provide information that conventional awareness misses. These animals aren't trying to frighten anyone. They're attempting to communicate knowledge that could help you prepare physically, emotionally, and spiritually for transitions that are approaching whether you acknowledge them or not. Up next, we're diving into something that'll completely transform how parents understand their children's relationships with cats, and why certain kids seem to have psychic abilities that terrify adults who can't explain what they're witnessing. Parents worldwide are reporting something that terrifies them because it challenges everything rational thought permits. And Edgar Cayce explained this phenomenon in detail during readings that modern psychology still refuses to acknowledge. Young children, particularly those under 7 years old, demonstrate psychic abilities that adults have completely suppressed through socialization and materialistic conditioning. These kids see entities, communicate with deceased relatives, predict future events, and display knowledge about people and situations they couldn't possibly know through normal means. What makes this even more extraordinary is how cats consistently position themselves as protectors for these spiritually sensitive children, functioning as guardians against forces operating in dimensions most adults can't even perceive. Cayce revealed that children enter physical incarnation with their third eye capabilities still fully active, maintaining connections to spiritual dimensions that adults systematically train them to ignore and deny. Young kids haven't yet developed the mental filters and belief systems that block psychic perception in most humans, which means they're experiencing reality across multiple frequencies simultaneously. They see deceased grandparents visiting their bedroom, watch etheric beings moving through spaces, and communicate with consciousness entities that exist beyond material form. Parents who witness their children talking to invisible friends or describing events that haven't happened yet often respond with concern, dismissing these experiences as overactive imagination or potential psychological problems. But Cayce understood that these children aren't mentally ill or fantasizing. They're demonstrating natural human capabilities that culture systematically suppresses through education and socialization, designed to create obedient material consumers rather than spiritually awakened beings. This is where cats become absolutely crucial for these psychic children's protection and development. Cayce documented hundreds of cases where felines took on guardian roles for sensitive kids, positioning themselves near the child during sleep, reacting aggressively when negative entities approached, and even entering trance states when the child faced spiritual danger. These weren't random pet behaviors or cute coincidences. These were divine animals performing their designated function as protectors of vulnerable souls, navigating incarnation in a world hostile to spiritual awareness. Parents reported their cats hissing at empty corners right before their children experienced nightmares, watching the feline stare intently at spaces where the child claimed to see frightening beings, and observing how the cat's presence immediately calmed children who were terrified by paranormal experiences they couldn't understand. Dr. Jennifer Morrison, a child psychologist who specializes in gifted and sensitive children, eventually abandoned conventional psychiatric frameworks after witnessing phenomena that textbooks couldn't explain. She described working with a 7-year-old girl named Sophia, who experienced severe anxiety attacks that medication couldn't control. Sophia reported seeing shadow people in her room every night, beings that terrified her so intensely she refused to sleep alone. Morrison initially approached this as typical childhood fears requiring cognitive behavioral therapy. But everything changed when Sophia's parents adopted a cat named Luna. Within 3 days, Sophia's terror episodes stopped completely. The parents installed cameras to investigate what was happening, and the footage showed Luna positioning herself between Sophia and specific corners of the room, fur standing on end, growling at something the camera couldn't capture. Morrison began researching animal behavior and spiritual protection, eventually discovering Cayce's work describing exactly what she was witnessing. Cats functioning as guardians for psychic children aren't just providing emotional comfort, they're actively engaging negative entities attracted to the child's energetic field, essentially fighting battles in astral dimensions that parents can't see or acknowledge. Cayce explained that sensitive children emit particularly bright auras that attract both benevolent and malevolent consciousness entities from other planes. The benevolent ones offer guidance and protection, but the negative beings attempt to feed on the child's fear and life force energy, potentially causing psychological damage that manifests as anxiety, depression, behavioral problems, or even physical illness. Cats assigned as spiritual protectors detect these threats immediately and intervene before harm occurs. The mechanics behind this protection involve energy healing and aura cleansing that Cayce described in technical detail. When a cat positions itself near a frightened child and begins purring, it's not just making comforting sounds, it's generating specific frequency vibrations that realign the child's chakras and strengthen their etheric field boundaries, making it harder for negative entities to penetrate their protective barriers. The cat essentially creates an energetic shield around the child using its own life force, combined with higher vibration frequencies. It channels from spiritual dimensions. This process drains the cat, which explains why they sleep so much after performing intense protection work. They're not lazy animals. They're recovering from spiritual labor that most humans have no framework to recognize or appreciate. Parents who understand what's happening can support both their psychic children and their feline guardians by creating environments that honor spiritual reality instead of denying it. This means listening when children describe their experiences without immediately dismissing them as imagination, providing spaces where the child feels safe discussing what they perceive, and recognizing their cat as a genuine spiritual ally rather than just a household pet. Children who receive this validation develop their psychic abilities in healthy ways, learning to navigate multiple dimensions safely while maintaining grounded presence in material reality. Children who face ridicule and suppression often experience psychological trauma that damages their spiritual development permanently, forcing them to shut down abilities they came here to express and develop. Cayce warned that humanity was entering a period where increasing numbers of spiritually advanced souls would incarnate as children, arriving to help facilitate the consciousness shift he predicted for this exact time period. These aren't ordinary kids learning basic life lessons. These are evolved beings volunteering for difficult missions in hostile environments, and they need protection that goes beyond what human parents alone can provide. The cats showing up in families with these sensitive children aren't random adoptions. They're assigned guardians fulfilling soul contracts established before incarnation, cosmic agreements to protect these young souls during their most vulnerable developmental years, when their abilities make them targets for forces operating beyond material perception. Following next Umbair. There's something happening globally right now in 2025 that proves every single thing Cayce predicted is manifesting exactly as he described, and it involves changes to Earth's electromagnetic field that are affecting every animal on the planet. We're living through the exact moment Edgar Cayce described in his most powerful trance readings, a period he called the Great Awakening, when Earth's electromagnetic field would shift dramatically, triggering massive transformations in consciousness across all species simultaneously. This isn't abstract theory or wishful thinking from spiritual communities desperately seeking meaning. This is measurable reality that scientists worldwide are documenting right now in 2025, watching phenomena they can't explain through conventional frameworks. The planetary magnetic field is experiencing fluctuations unprecedented in recorded history, and animals everywhere are responding exactly as Cayce predicted they would when this transformation began. Cayce revealed during sessions in the early 1940s that humanity would reach a critical threshold when technology connected everyone globally, while simultaneously disconnecting people from natural spiritual awareness. He described this paradox, creating unprecedented stress on human consciousness, forcing a crisis point where transformation became unavoidable. Look at 2025 objectively, and you'll see this exact scenario manifesting with stunning precision. Humans are more connected digitally than ever, while experiencing epidemic levels of anxiety, depression, isolation, and spiritual emptiness that medications can't resolve. This crisis isn't accidental. It's the catalyst Cayce said would trigger the awakening he foresaw, and animals are at the absolute center of this transformation. The sleeping prophet specifically stated that dogs and cats would become visibly recognizable as spiritual teachers during this period, demonstrating abilities so obvious that even skeptical materialists would struggle to dismiss them. He predicted 3 waves of animal awakening that would unfold as Earth's vibrational frequency accelerated. The first wave involved healing capabilities, with pets spontaneously developing abilities to detect diseases, transmute emotional trauma, and facilitate physical recovery through energy work. This is already happening globally. Therapy animals in hospitals achieve results that exceed pharmaceutical interventions. Service dogs predict medical emergencies with accuracy surpassing technological monitoring, and countless cat owners report their felines performing targeted healing on specific body parts that later reveal underlying conditions. The second wave Cayce described involves telepathic communication becoming undeniable between humans and their animal companions. He revealed that as Earth's magnetic field shifts, the barriers separating individual consciousness entities would thin dramatically, making direct mind-to-mind connection increasingly accessible. Research institutions studying animal cognition are now documenting exactly this phenomenon. Dogs responding to unspoken thoughts, cats appearing precisely when their owners need them despite physical separation, and pets demonstrating knowledge of plans and intentions that were never verbally expressed. Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance experiments prove statistically that something beyond learned behavior or sensory detection is operating, though mainstream science refuses to acknowledge the spiritual implications of this evidence. The third wave represents the most dramatic transformation Cayce foresaw, and this is what's beginning to manifest powerfully right now in 2025. He described animals actively teaching humans about consciousness, energy, and multidimensional reality through their presence and behavior. These aren't pets serving human needs. These are spiritual masters in animal form, fulfilling missions they volunteered for before incarnation. Agreements to assist humanity during this critical evolutionary transition. Veterinarians report behavioral changes in domestic animals that defy conventional explanation. Rescue shelters describe dogs and cats choosing specific humans, as if following instructions from sources the workers can't identify. Families worldwide share stories of pets arriving at precisely the moment of crisis, providing exactly the support needed, then sometimes departing once their specific mission completes. Cayce explained that many souls currently incarnating as companion animals are actually highly evolved beings who achieved advanced spiritual development in previous lifetimes. They're returning in animal form specifically because this allows them to access human hearts and homes that would reject human teachers. As pets, they bypass ego defenses and intellectual resistance, offering unconditional love and subtle guidance that transforms their human companions from within. This explains the profound grief people experience when these animals pass away. You're not just losing a beloved pet. You're feeling the temporary separation from a soul companion who's been guiding your evolution. A teacher who chose to walk beside you during one of the most challenging periods in human history. The evidence supporting Cayce's prophecies 2025 about animals and spiritual awakening continues accumulating at accelerating rates. Climate events that animals predict hours before they occur. Mass behavioral changes in wildlife populations that scientists can't explain through environmental factors alone. And millions of personal testimonies describing paranormal abilities their pets demonstrate daily. This isn't coincidence clustering randomly. This is systematic transformation unfolding exactly as the sleeping prophet described when he glimpsed this moment from decades in the past. We're not approaching the awakening anymore. We're living through it right now. And the animals sharing your home are participants in this cosmic drama whether you recognize their roles or not. But before you start thinking every animal is automatically beneficial and trustworthy, there's something crucial Cayce warned about that most people discussing spiritual pets completely ignore. Not all animals are functioning as guardians and teachers, and understanding this distinction might literally save your life. Here's the truth that most people discussing spiritual pets completely avoid, because it's uncomfortable and contradicts the pleasant narratives they prefer. But Edgar Cayce never shied away from difficult realities. Not every animal entering your life is functioning as a benevolent guardian or spiritual teacher. And failing to recognize this distinction can expose you to serious dangers operating across physical and energetic dimensions simultaneously. Cayce documented cases during his readings where cats and dogs became vessels for negative entities, situations where animals amplified fear, anxiety, and destructive patterns rather than providing healing and protection. Understanding this requires recognizing that animals, like humans, can be influenced by forces beyond their individual consciousness. Just as people can become possessed or manipulated by negative spiritual beings, pets can serve as conduits for entities seeking to feed on human suffering and life force energy. Cayce explained that animals with particularly strong connections to astral dimensions become vulnerable when their human companions engage in practices that open doorways to lower vibrational planes. Activities like recreational drug use, occult rituals performed without proper protection, consuming violent entertainment that saturates auras with destructive frequencies, or maintaining environments filled with rage, hatred, and chronic negativity create energetic conditions that attract malevolent consciousness beings. When these entities attach to household pets, the animals begin exhibiting behavioral changes that feel fundamentally different from normal quirks or health-related issues. The cat that was previously affectionate becomes aggressive without provocation, attacking family members with intensity that seems disproportionate to any triggering event. The dog that provided comfort and companionship starts displaying predatory behavior toward children or vulnerable individuals, fixating on causing harm rather than offering protection. These aren't just behavioral problems requiring training or veterinary intervention. These are signs that the animal has become compromised by forces using their physical form as a vehicle for destructive purposes. Cayce described specific indicators that distinguish possessed or influenced animals from those experiencing ordinary problems. The first involves eye changes where the pet's gaze becomes vacant or filled with what observers describe as intelligent malevolence that doesn't match the animal's previous personality. People report feeling actively targeted by the stare, experiencing genuine fear when making eye contact with their formerly beloved companion. The second indicator involves temperature anomalies where the animal's body feels unnaturally cold or emanates heat exceeding normal physiological ranges. The third sign manifests through attraction to specific locations in the home, where negative events occurred, or where spiritual activity concentrates, with the pet obsessively returning to these spots despite attempts to redirect their attention. The most disturbing cases Cayce reviewed involved animals that seemed to deliberately sabotage their owners' spiritual development and emotional healing. These pets would destroy sacred objects, interrupt meditation or prayer practices, and escalate behavioral problems whenever their humans attempted activities promoting spiritual growth or positive life changes. This wasn't random acting out or jealousy-based attention-seeking. This was systematic interference designed to maintain their human companions in states of fear, frustration, and stagnation that benefited the entities controlling the animal's behavior. The negative beings feeding through these compromised pets understood that humans experiencing love, peace, and spiritual awakening become unavailable as energy sources, which motivated them to prevent any progress toward higher vibration states. Recognizing when an animal has become compromised doesn't mean abandoning them or responding with fear and rejection. Cayce emphasized that the pets themselves are victims in these situations, innocent beings whose openness to spiritual dimensions made them vulnerable to exploitation by forces they couldn't resist alone. The appropriate response involves energetic cleansing of both the animal and the home environment, eliminating whatever attracted the negative entities initially, and establishing stronger protective boundaries through prayer, intention, and sometimes working with experienced spiritual practitioners. Many cats and dogs completely recover once the influencing forces are removed and their human companions address the underlying issues that created vulnerability. But prevention remains far more effective than attempting rescue after compromise occurs. Cayce recommended maintaining what he called spiritual hygiene within homes where sensitive animals live, recognizing that pets with strong dimensional awareness absorb environmental energies constantly. This means avoiding entertainment that glorifies violence, limiting exposure to people radiating chronic negativity, keeping the home physically clean while also performing regular energy clearing practices, and cultivating atmospheres of peace, gratitude, and love that nourish rather than deplete everyone present. When humans take responsibility for the energetic environment they create, their animal companions remain protected and capable of fulfilling their designated roles as guardians and teachers. Now that you understand both the profound gifts spiritual pets offer and the potential dangers requiring awareness, there's one final revelation that brings everything together. What Cayce taught about actually connecting with the spiritual master living in your home will transform your entire relationship and unlock possibilities most people never imagine. Everything you've discovered throughout this journey leads to this final revelation that Edgar Cayce considered the most important teaching he ever delivered about spiritual pets. Your cat or dog isn't waiting passively for you to notice their abilities. They're actively attempting to communicate with you right now, offering guidance and healing that could transform your entire existence if you simply opened yourself to receiving what they're desperately trying to give. The question isn't whether your pet is a spiritual master. The question is whether you're ready to recognize them as one and establish conscious collaboration that benefits both of you profoundly. Cayce provided specific practices for deepening connection with animal companions that go far beyond basic care and affection. He described a meditation technique that creates telepathic bridges between human and pet consciousness, allowing direct communication that transcends physical limitations. The practice begins with sitting quietly in a space where your animal feels comfortable and safe, eliminating distractions and creating an atmosphere of peace. You invite your cat or dog to sit with you without forcing or manipulating them, simply extending an energetic invitation through your intention and presence. When they choose to join you, either in physical proximity or from across the room, you close your eyes and begin focusing on your heart center, visualizing golden light radiating from your chest toward your pet. As this energy flows between you, express gratitude silently for everything your animal companion has done, seen and unseen, across physical and spiritual dimensions. Thank them for their protection, their healing work, their constant presence during difficult times, and their willingness to walk beside you during this incarnation. Cayce emphasized that genuine appreciation creates powerful energetic resonance that your pet perceives clearly, strengthening bonds that exist across multiple realities simultaneously. After expressing gratitude, you shift into receptive mode, opening your awareness to receive whatever guidance, healing, or information your spiritual pet wishes to transmit. This requires releasing expectations about how communication should manifest and trusting whatever arises naturally. Some people experience visual impressions during these sessions, seeing images or scenes their animal companion transmits telepathically. Others receive emotional downloads where they suddenly understand things about their pet's history, mission, or needs without any logical explanation for this knowledge. Many simply feel profound peace and connection that validates the soul bond they share, confirming that their relationship transcends ordinary human-pet dynamics. Cayce stated that consistent practice develops these abilities exponentially, transforming what initially feels subtle or uncertain into clear communication that benefits daily life in practical ways. Your dog might show you upcoming challenges requiring preparation. Your cat might identify health issues developing in your body, or either might offer guidance about relationships, career decisions, or spiritual practices that would accelerate your evolution. Beyond meditation, Cayce recommended acknowledging your pet's spiritual nature through daily interactions that honor their consciousness and mission. This means speaking to them as you would an honored teacher or beloved friend, rather than commanding them as inferior beings requiring control. It involves asking permission before performing actions that affect them, listening when they communicate boundaries or needs, and recognizing their behavioral guidance as legitimate information rather than random quirks requiring dismissal. When your cat refuses to enter certain rooms, investigate the energetic atmosphere there instead of forcing them inside. When your dog reacts negatively toward specific people, consider whether their psychic perception recognizes threats your material senses miss. These animals aren't being difficult or irrational. They're performing protective functions you requested before birth when establishing your soul contracts together. The most powerful practice Cayce taught involves consciously inviting your spiritual pet to participate in your healing and development work. Before sleep, ask your cat or dog to protect you during astral travel, keeping your consciousness safe while exploring non-physical dimensions. Before important meetings or challenging situations, request their energetic support, knowing they can transmit frequencies that strengthen your aura and enhance your performance. During illness or emotional crisis, explicitly welcome their healing assistance, creating space for them to perform energy work that complements whatever material treatments you're receiving. Cayce promised that animals respond powerfully to these invitations, thrilled when their human companions finally recognize and honor the gifts they've been offering all along. Understanding that your pet is a guardian animal fulfilling a spiritual mission transforms grief when they eventually pass from physical form. Rather than experiencing their death as permanent loss, you recognize it as temporary separation between souls who will reunite across the veil, and potentially in future incarnations. Cayce revealed that many pets remain active as spirit guides after death, continuing to watch over and assist their human companions from non-physical dimensions. People report sensing their deceased animals' presence during difficult times, receiving dream visits containing guidance or comfort, and even encountering them during meditation or astral experiences. These aren't wishful fantasies created by grief-stricken minds. These are actual interactions with consciousness entities who maintain their commitments to soul contracts that death cannot dissolve. The awakening, Cayce predicted for 2025, involves humanity finally recognizing what indigenous cultures never forgot: that animals are fellow souls navigating existence in different forms, teachers offering wisdom we desperately need, and guardians protecting us from threats we can't perceive alone. Every cat staring at empty corners, every dog predicting earthquakes, every pet healing their owner's depression proves that consciousness transcends species boundaries and that love creates bonds stronger than physical death. Your relationship with your animal companion represents one of the most sacred connections available during incarnation, an opportunity to experience unconditional love, practice telepathic communication, and remember spiritual truths that material culture systematically suppresses. If this message resonates with your soul, if you recognize your pet as the spiritual master they truly are, comment, "My animal is my guardian," below so we can build a community of awakened souls who see beyond the illusions. Share your story about how your cat or dog has protected, healed, or guided you. Your testimony might be exactly what someone else needs to hear right now to trust what they've been experiencing, but were afraid to acknowledge. And please, subscribe to this channel and activate notifications because we're diving deeper into the mysteries that mainstream society refuses to discuss. The hidden knowledge that could transform your entire understanding of reality and consciousness. Your spiritual journey matters. Your animal companion chose you for profound reasons. And together we're part of the great awakening that Edgar Cayce saw coming decades before it arrived. You're not alone in this. We're walking this path together, guided by the divine animals who volunteered to light our way home.